Well, hey YouTube, welcome back once again to Jack's Tech Hut. I'm your host, Jack, obviously, and today we're going to be talking about virtualization software. What is virtualization software and why do you need it? Why is it important to most hackers in the world that they have virtual computers on top of their computer? Let me explain that to you. So let's go ahead and get back into the computer here and we're going to have a look. So first of all, virtualization software, we're going to be using Oracle's VirtualBox. Now, why do I use Oracle's VirtualBox? Well, first of all, it's absolutely free. Anybody can use it. It's not going to cost you any money. So that's a win-win for everybody. So what is virtualization? In hardware virtualization, the host machine is the machine that is used by the virtualization, and the guest machine is the virtual machine. So we have a guest machine is running on top of our hardware or our actual computer system, which is the host machine. So how many virtual machines can a host machine run? This is basically, controlled by or set by how much RAM you have in your computer and how many different resources you can actually give to the virtual machine. So one host machine may have many virtual machines. And this basically could be unlimited depending on how you're running those virtual machines. I used to work for a company that had VirtualBox running, and they had a couple virtual virtualized servers running on top of the actual Windows computer system. I wouldn't really recommend that. I have a lot of other ways I'll teach you down the road on how you should virtualize your servers, and it's not running it on top of Windows. It's not a good idea. But VirtualBox is very good for us to run different virtual machines that we can use, play with, and learn how they work and test them out. We're going to be using VirtualBox with Kali Linux. And the reason we're going to do this is you don't have to load Kali Linux on top of your actual computer, what we call bare metal installs. We don't have to do a bare metal install and have Kali Linux using the whole entire computer. So we're going to use Kali Linux inside of a virtual machine. Now the words host and guest are used to distinguish the software that runs on the physical machine from the software that runs on the virtual machine. Okay? Again, we just talked about that. There's a host machine, which is the machine that is used by the virtualization software. So that would be Windows, Linux, or the Mac operating system. It's actually the computer itself. And the guest operating systems are the systems that we're running inside those virtual machines. Now, let's see here. The software or firmware that creates a virtual machine on the host hardware is called a hypervisor or virtual machine monitor. This brings up a very important point. When you load VirtualBox onto your computer, it may come up and say you don't have hypervisor turned on. It's very simple to do that. Now, hopefully at this point, and if you're watching these videos, you're probably familiar with the computer system and you're familiar with your BIOS, okay, your basic input-output system for the computer. You have to go inside the BIOS when the computer starts up, usually hit F2 or escape or F10, whatever it may be. Do a Google search based on your computer model and find out how do you get into the setup of the computer. Once you get into the computer system, you have to turn on hypervisor. It may be off by default, so you have to go in there and turn it on. All right, the next thing we're going to be talking about is Oracle VirtualBox. And I told you already why I choose Oracle VirtualBox, and I'm choosing it for these lessons here on YouTube on Jack's Tech Hut because it's free to use and it's very easy to install. Also, it works on all major operating systems. And by the major operating systems, I'm talking about what I like to refer to as the big three: Windows, Mac, and Linux. There's a version for each of those that you can run your virtual machines on top of. There's also ports for FreeBSD and GNOME, which many of you will not run FreeBSD, and you'll probably never even see GNOME. It supports the creation and management of a virtual machine running on these operating systems, as well as limited virtualization on Mac OS guest on Apple hardware. It's not very limited. It pretty much runs every virtual machine you can think of. You can do it on a Mac also. I do it all the time. For some guest operating systems, a guest edition package or device drivers and system applications is available. Now, I'll show you how to install those on different types of machines. We don't use those on Kali Linux machines, but if you want to virtualize for some reason Windows on top of Windows, you can install a guest package that will allow you to do things like cut and copy from the clipboard, from the host machine to the virtualized machine or the guest machine. You can also do things like change your screen resolution, which I found that Kali Linux just works pretty well right out of the box, so we don't have to worry about a lot of that. All right, so it says here, which typically improves performance, as I was talking about, especially that of graphics, allowing you to go to full screen, and allows changing the resolution of the guest OS automatically when the window or the virtual machine on the host OS is resized. So as you're sizing the box, and I'll show you that, the virtualization host software will actually fill the screen or, go to full screen, and it will do it on its own. Okay, now that we understand what virtualization is, we understand that we're using VirtualBox, and now you know what VirtualBox actually is and how that works. We're going to go ahead and we're going to install VirtualBox. First, we're going to go to the website to download VirtualBox. If you just do a quick Google search for VirtualBox, you will find it. All right, let me show you this here. And I'm not going to get into it right now, but I am using the Brave web browser. If you really consider and you're kind of security conscientious, I would suggest using Brave browser and get off Google Chrome altogether. Google is a company that tracks everything you do on the internet. Now, if you're worried about your privacy, Brave is not tracking anything, but it's still using the Chromium engine underneath. Now, if that sounds kind of advanced for you, don't worry about it. Just let me tell you and take it from me. If you want to take your privacy, make sure you're using the Brave web browser. Okay. What you're going to do now is, if you see right here, I'm going to try to blow this up on my screen here. Let me see if I can't blow this up a little bit. All right. Should be able to see this a little bit better. So under VirtualBox, 7.0.6 platform packages is the current package that we're currently looking at. Those are the latest, greatest versions. You have Windows hosts, Mac, developer preview for Mac. I wouldn't suggest that for the M1 or M2 hosts, unless you have an M1 or M2 processor, then maybe you need that. Linux distributions, and folks, it covers a lot of Linux distributions. My go-to Linux package is Linux Mint. I've been running it as my daily driver, so they say. A daily driver operating system is just that. It's the software that you're using every day of the week. And on my school computer that I teach with, I have a computer that's running Linux Mint, and it's been running Linux Mint now for 2 years, and it's perfectly great. It's very solid. But doing these videos, what I'm going to show you is the Windows host. So you simply click on Windows host, and it's going to want to download it. Stick it in your downloads folder. I probably already have it in here, but click on save. It's going to download it very quickly to your computer. Once you have it downloaded, let me go back to my document here. So we selected the correct download based on what type of computer you're running this on for VirtualBox. Once the software is downloaded to your computer, simply open the download to begin the install VirtualBox. All right, seems easy enough. Let's click the little arrow on the browser here at the bottom and click on Open. You're going to get the UAC, or User Account Control box, to say, hey, look, you're installing something. Let's click on Yes. We want to install it. It's going to go through the setup. It's very simple. Click on Next. Leave everything selected as default. Click on Next. Network interfaces it's going to talk about. Just click on Yes. It's fine. Missing dependency, Python core. Yes, we want to do that. And install. Now, I do currently have VirtualBox on this computer, but I don't know what version it is. I believe I updated it before I started this series of videos, but we're going to go ahead and it's going to install the dependencies. And if you don't know what dependencies are, it's just pieces of software that rely on, this software relies on the dependencies or pieces of software to allow it to run properly on your computer. So right there, it's removing shortcuts. Now it's going to republish it. I hope it has my virtual machines when I open them up. We'll go from there and see how that goes. So again, now remember, virtualization is just that. It allows us to run any operating system basically we want to on top of our Windows computer. Except for, I know there's ways that you say, no, Jack, you can do it, is running the Mac operating system on top of your Windows computer. Now, with that said, if you're running VirtualBox on your Mac, you can run multiple instances of the Mac operating system for testing or for writing programs, if you care to do that. I also like to run a virtualized Mac operating system to run attacks against it to see if I can crack into the software without touching my actual Mac on its own. Okay, start VirtualBox after installation. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to minimize the web browser. This is what VirtualBox looks like. It's very clean interface. It's very easy to use. On here, you'll see that I have a Ubuntu desktop. All right, so I'm running Ubuntu Linux on top of my Windows computer. Fedora Linux. Obviously, I like to test different Linux distros. We'll talk about distros in another lesson outside of this one. You can see I do have my Kali Linux virtual machine running on top of my Windows computer, as well as I have a Windows Server 2022. What I like to do is create different versions of operating systems, and I open my Kali Linux, and I like to scan those operating systems, see if there's any vulnerabilities within those different operating systems and different ways I can crack into those. That's why I like to have different operating systems running on top of my Windows computer. Now, in this particular lesson, we are not going to get into running or showing you how to actually install a virtual machine onto VirtualBox. I'm going to save that for the next lesson because I'm going to show you how to download Kali Linux, what Kali Linux to download, because if you look at Kali Linux, we're going to look at that here for a minute. Let me see if there's anything else in my Word document. All right, the last thing in the Word document before I show you Kali Linux, I would recommend having a large hard drive in your computer to save your virtual machines. It doesn't work the greatest with an external hard drive. I've tried it, and the read-write speed between the USB cable and the USB hard drive is not always the best to get the best experience. So I would recommend putting a hard drive inside the computer system. And I did install an additional one so you don't fill up your actual hard drive with virtual machines. So if I show you that, let me see here. If I can show you that here for a second. So you see here I have a storage drive or a D drive. And on this D drive, I have a lot of different videos on there, of course. I have what's called a folder for VM, which stands for virtual machines. On this, you'll see my Kali Linux, my Ubuntu desktop, and my Windows Server. So those are all actually in that VM folder. I know you don't see the Fedora in there because I probably installed it in the wrong location. Because most times it will be installed, the VMs will be installed in, let me see where they put those. Users, your name. I thought it was under documents here. Maybe it's not. Okay, VirtualBox VMs, and you'll see Fedora and Kali in there. So I actually installed those in the wrong location, and that happens. So not a big deal. You could move them, but for this presentation, I am not going to move those around. We're just going to leave those sit where they're sitting. But I would recommend having an additional hard drive inside your computer so you can actually not worry about filling up your hard drive. So to start one of these, if you go to Fedora, all you have to do is, Kali Linux, all you have to do is click on Start. When you do that, you will see a little indication here. It's powering up, so the computer's actually turning on, just like if you'd hit the power button. I see they put some new weird slide things in here. I don't know why they're doing that. And then you would actually go through and actually run the installer. All right. We're not going to run the installer on this today because I'm going to show you another way to download Kali Linux for VirtualBox and be able to get it up and running a lot quicker. I don't know why this thing is doing that. There we go. We got it. Whatever. All right. So now you would go through and you would install your Kali Linux. But I believe that was already installed. Let me see here. Optical drives. Yeah, Kali Linux is checked here. So let's uncheck that. Let's go ahead and restart this machine. So what I did was, and I'll show you that later on, is when you install from an ISO, which is a image file, you have a virtualized CD checked in there. Well, I just unchecked it because if you leave it checked, it's going to boot from that every time. Let's go ahead and reset this now without it turned on and see if I in fact had Kali Linux installed on this computer. And I believe I do. Yeah, I do have it installed on here. Another thing, when you start setting up virtual machines, it's a good idea to have either a password manager set up somewhere. I would recommend that. Or at the very least, at least have a file on your Windows desktop and just call it passwords. Just have all your virtual machine passwords in there because you're going to forget. Believe me, take it from me, I know. So if you look here, and if I blow this up now, if I go to full screen, you can see where Kali Linux automatically resized itself. And we now have this machine running. We can go to full screen mode. And if you click the little button on the top here, so this is running XFCE. That's the desktop it's currently running. We're going to look at a couple different desktops with Linux, I think, as we go through this and show you some different ways that you can use Linux in different desktop formations. One big thing that I love about Linux is you can set it up based on how you work. Windows comes out, Windows is proprietary. It's set up how Windows works. The Mac is the same way how Mac works. We really can't change the desktop a whole lot. But on Linux, you can set the desktop up and pick a desktop environment that you're going to feel comfortable with working with every day. Kali Linux is not a daily driver. Do not use Kali Linux as your main operating system on your computer. A lot of people say, well, Jack, why is that? Very simply put, Kali Linux is made for penetration testing and hacking. Most everything on Kali Linux is running as full root privileges. That means the operating system, anything can attack this operating system because everything is running at full root privileges. You're not running as a standard user. You don't have to authenticate software every time you try to do something on it. It is running as a full root privileged person, okay? Now, there is stuff in here like Firefox. So if you need a web browser, you can use Firefox. Now, if it seems like it's a little sluggish opening, that's because I have just a little bit of RAM associated with Kali Linux. Maybe not a lot, just enough to get me by. The one thing I do like with the built-in web browser with Firefox is it has these shortcuts already placed up here. One thing is like, let me see here, Kali Linux docs. Okay, so it has all kind of docs already built in here. So you can go through, you can look at all this different stuff in here. It's amazing what this software would do and how many tools are presented to you. Another thing I really like it for is the exploit database. Now, exploit database is just that. These are all known exploits that you can penetrate computers with. Look, here's our WordPress plugin, real-time status. So you could do all this different stuff, and there is tons in here. You can actually search this database. Let's say we want to search it for Windows exploits. You simply type in Windows, and we can see now Windows Defender, directional bypass. There's ways to bypass Windows Defender if we're writing a backdoor program. Migration bypass, Microsoft Windows Command EXE stack buffer overflows. If you click on one of these, it will tell you exactly how to run these things. So down here, you just simply go through and you do a little research. I teach my students research at the school, and the reason I teach research is you have to have, and I was working with students today where you have to have patience and you have to be able to do research to do our job. Exploits change every day and they get patched all the time. So you have to find new exploits. You can't just use something you used 5 years ago because it's probably not going to work anymore. So you'll go down through here and you'll find out how you would actually use this command line buffer overflow to actually break into a command line and be able to do penetration testing on that system. Let's go back. And there's many more in here. Windows clients, Windows shells, Windows Ghost, Microsoft Windows Wizard optimization, load privileges escalation. It's just endless how many different exploits you can actually find. So I hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial. And if you have, and if you've enjoyed this particular video and you watched my first video, please click on that subscribe button. I would love to have you here. YouTube has these weird algorithms, but the main thing I'm looking for with this channel is helping you. You're the one I want to help out with this stuff. And I hope that you'll keep returning, keep taking notes. Make sure you have a notebook beside you so you can take notes down as I'm going through this stuff. I am going to find somewhere, hopefully, to post my Word documents so that way you'll have access to those as I open these shows and go through a couple of the key topics that we're working with. I think that's important that you always know what we're looking at and how we're getting there. On the next video, I will be showing you how to download Kali Linux, which one you want to download for VirtualBox. You can do it one of two ways, but one way I prefer makes it a little easier on you. I'm going to show you how to set Kali Linux up with VirtualBox, and I will show you how to finally open it like this one is, and how I have a full running version of Kali Linux on my computer that's not hurting my Windows installation, my underlying Windows 10 installation. So folks, thank you very much for watching this video. Please tell anybody that you talk to about these new videos at Jack's Tech Hut. I'll be doing a lot of different kind of technology videos. Right now, this is going to be our penetration testing series. It was going to be my first series I'm working on, and I'm going to stick to this series until we get somewhere to the end that I feel that we have enough content, and then we'll move on to something else in technology. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, remember, keep practicing and keep up that research. You're going to need it if you're in the technology business. I will talk to you next time. Bye for now.